Hey guys, Jesse Lavelle, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be doing a review on the Canon RF 16mm f2.8 lens. Now let's start with the bad thing that I found out about this lens. And what I'm going to do is just go ahead and pull this picture up that I took. Now I know this isn't the most exciting picture that I've ever taken, but it's just a picture of the wallpaper on my wall here and my thermostat. Tried to push the thermostat up towards the corner so that you could see what kind of distortion was happening. And, you know, I've got relatively straight lines here. I thought this would be a decent test for just looking at what the distortion that we can kind of expect to see out of this lens. Now, that was one thing that I was, a little concerned about, being that it's a budget lens, it's not that expensive. Distortion was hopefully going to be, handled decently since it's going to be a prime lens, even though it's inexpensive, but unfortunately it seems to be that there's a fair amount of distortion happening here, as well as I don't have a actual, profile built in to Adobe Camera Raw, so there's actually no way of me just applying a profile correction, and I have to do it myself. Now, unfortunately, that means that I have to apply quite a bit of distortion correction in there, and then I have to, after I do that, I have to crop in pretty severely, as well as having to add quite a bit of vignetting correction. So having to add so much vignette and distortion correction, and then having to crop in so severely on the image to manage to get straight lines. Now again, there may be somebody that does this much better than I do. I'm not very well versed in making my own corrections as far as like this. I've usually always just used the built-in correction profiles that Adobe's had, but unfortunately they don't have one for either the RF 50 1.8 or the RF 16 2.8. So unfortunately that leaves us to our own devices and we have to come up with our own correction profile. And to me, it just seems like if I have to crop that far in after applying the distortion corrections, it's almost like not even shooting with a 16mm focal length anymore. So unfortunately, that's kind of a really bad thing, and now I kind of understand why all the reviewers weren't allowed to take still images on the pre-reviews of this, because I don't think Canon wanted anyone to know about this before they went and ordered the lens. So that's something that's really disappointing coming from this lens. That being said, I mean, you've got to take it with a grain of salt because it is a budget lens. This lens only costs $300. It's not the fanciest, best lens, so I guess maybe I just had too high of expectations out of something that's so budget friendly. But it is what it is. That being said, guys, on the video end of things, I've been extremely happy with this lens. I can use it to vlog around. I don't have to have my arm completely stretched out. The focal length is perfect, and you're not getting any kind of issues. And I really don't notice that much distortion. Like, it's there, but we're at 16mm. You're going to have some distortion no matter what. I expected that, especially out of a budget lens. But as far for my purposes, as far as like using it for maybe some of the fitness videos that I shoot, or possibly just using it for a vlogging lens, it's going to fit the bill perfectly. It's lightweight, it's small, it pairs really nicely with my R6 because it lacks image stabilization, which keeps the lens really light, but then having the additional in-body stabilization coming from the R6, and then your other two options to add digital stabilization on top of that, you can get a really nice wide field of view and have decent stabilization there. I'm just so excited to have a wide-angle lens that goes onto my R6, and now I know this is a cheap lens, right? This is $300. You don't get lenses for much less than that these days, and it doesn't include optical stabilization. It's a nice, light, really small, little, almost pancake, but not quite lens. And it's a really small lens that you can just throw onto the R6 body like I have it right now. You still have stabilization coming out of the body itself. So that coupled with this lens is just like the perfect vlogging lens. Check it out. You can see so much around me, and it's just awesome. I don't even have my arm stretched all the way out. I can stretch way out. Like when I had a 24mm, I had to hold my arm way out there and like my shoulder would get tired. Now I can just kick it right in, bring it right in here, still have plenty of room around me, and it's just awesome. It looks great on video. The autofocus seems to be very reliable. It's working great. Maybe not the most impressive lens in the world, but for what it is, I think that, Canon did a really good job. It's super lightweight, it's small, it doesn't have internal stabilization, but they know that the R6 and the R5 now includes the in-body stabilization, so paired with one of those bodies, this thing is like a really perfect little vlogging setup. The distortion isn't so bad in the video that I feel like it's unusable, and I really hate that kind of fisheye look. How does it look? I mean, I'll stretch my arms out here. You can see what the distortion looks like when you're using video, but all in all, I'm pretty happy with it. Like, I don't have to have my arm completely extended out like I did when I was using the 24mm that I was always using for vlogging. So I'm really happy to have this, as well as other videos, or just using it inside in tight spaces. It's going to come in super handy. I think that it's a really exciting focal length. To be honest with you, like, as soon as I got it onto my camera, I was super excited to see what the images looked like. Like, just being able to get so much of the environment around you really changes the perspective, and it's really fun to use. So I think 16mm is probably going to be something that I'll probably use quite often, so I'm excited to have the lens in my arsenal. Even if it is a budget-friendly lens that maybe isn't that impressive, I still think it's going to be useful in a lot of different situations, especially being that where I live has really tight rooms, and I need those really wide field of views to get some of the images that I need. It's going to be a very welcomed lens in my kit. I think the image itself looks nice. Like, the contrast is there, it looks good. It's nice and sharp. f2.8, again, it's not the brightest aperture in the world, but it does work. I'm able to shoot indoors in dark scenarios and not have to crank my ISO up. The autofocus has been really reliable and worked really well for me. So, you know, it's kind of checking the boxes where it needs to, and it's cutting the corners where it has to. So again, guys, please remember, this is more or less just a first impression video. I've only owned the lens for one day, so come back in a couple of weeks. I'm going to have a definitive review about this lens coming, let you know all of the ins and outs. I'm going to have a lot more sample footage and sample pictures coming out of this lens. I'm going to be using it extensively for the next couple of weeks, so please stay tuned. Again, guys, if you think this video helped you in any way, think about going below, subscribing, clicking the notification bell, and I'll see you on my next video.